Welcome to Pigskins Pageantry, a podcast dedicated to all things SEC football. My name is Wes, and I'd like to invite you to join me, Jesse, and Matt each week as we discuss last week's games, news from around the league, make predictions for the upcoming games, and much, much more. What's up, everybody? It's Wes, and welcome to a melancholy episode of Pigskins Pageantry. No, I'm just kidding. Lots of exciting bowl games to talk about, and then a rather different landscape in terms of the national championship and how it looks. So, without further ado, let's just go ahead and introduce two of the best hosts in all the land. Jesse, what's going on?
I'm here. I'm okay.
Now.
I have had time to sit with my thoughts and feelings, and we're working through them.
All I have to say is I was super nervous and I wasn't super invested in who won, so I can only imagine what it was like around your house. So, Matt, what's going on, my friend?
Jesse's talking like she's got a hangover and she's trying not to make herself break into a million pieces. Which, to be fair, after that Rose Bowl, I would imagine, probably felt a little bit like a hangover. I'm good. Happy New Year to everybody. We're vibing. We're just happy as pig and poop. Nothing you can do.
Good times. And let's go ahead and talk about some of those bowl games.
Always remember, if you ain't first, you're last.
All right. Well, the first bowl game that we watched was the Texas A&M versus Oklahoma State Tax Act Texas Bowl from NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas. Matt, we got together with Grant and watched this one. It was quite an enjoyable time.
I thoroughly enjoyed this game. It was a lot of fun to watch. I feel bad about Texas A&M losing, but it was a good time.
Oklahoma State, as you mentioned, won 31-23. Jesse gets the point here. So Jalen Henderson out on A&M's first play from scrimmage. A&M with only two starters playing on defense, and those things kind of showed in this game. I said within the first couple of drives that these two things that I just mentioned were ultimately going to tell the story of this game. But to his credit, Marcel Reed did great coming in at quarterback, but just too much offense from Oklahoma State, including a rushing touchdown in the second quarter by sophomore quarterback Gunnar Gundy, which, if that name's familiar to you, it's because he's the son of the head coach, Mike Gundy, and, well, he's in the transfer portal. So that's awkward.
Hard to play for your parents. I mean,
it really is.
We've all been coached by a parent, more than likely, right? And it's terrible. I love my father. Truly, truly, truly. And I'm not athletic. So I didn't play sports, up until adulthood. I played growing up, and my dad was one of my softball coaches, and I hated it.
Yeah.
He treated me differently than he treated the other kids because he saw me at home practicing or saw my potential or wanted to push me more than he pushed the other kids. So at one point, it was me and one of my friends, and her dad was also one of the coaches. He would coach me and my dad would coach her because we could not with our own parents.
Right.
It's really hard. It doesn't work out well. Tiger Woods and his dad, I guess, did okay, but most people don't.
Yeah, I think that's a common scenario, what you mentioned. And then also, from the parent standpoint, it's kind of a lose-lose, right? Because you don't want to treat your kid differently, but then sometimes in so doing, you end up treating them differently anyway, because you don't want favoritism to be perceived. So it's kind of I don't know. But yes, I definitely understand. So in this game, technically A&M did have an opportunity at the end as they cut it to one score with the 51-yard field goal by Randy Bond. But in the end, Oklahoma State able to close things out. So Matt, we watched this one together. What were your thoughts?
I really enjoyed this game. Being an outside observer and not really having any kind of inkling towards allegiance here. I mean, it was a fun game to watch. I mean, Oklahoma State kind of got out in front really early, and then A&M was able to climb back into it. And like you said, Wes, almost came back and tied it up right there at the end. And I think we were sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. We're like, they're about to tie this thing up. We're going to go to overtime, but it sadly just did not hit like you wanted to. Couple things here. I was really impressed with Marcel Reed. I thought he looked really good coming off the bench. And remind me, Wes, is he a true freshman, like right out of high school freshman?
I want to say yes, but it's been a
I
minute
think
since
he
I watched
was.
this one, so I don't remember exactly.
But when he comes off the bench and A&M having the transfer portal issues, the coaching change, all the different things that are going on with it, for him to come off the bench and throw for over 350 yards in this game, was pretty impressive. He looked real calm and collected for the most part. He looked good when he had to make tough decisions. He was safe with the ball for the most part. I was pretty impressed with him. Jade Walker had himself a day too, 137 yards in the air. Unfortunately, couldn't get a touchdown, but still looked really good. Oklahoma State gets 10 wins on the season. Gundy's got to be happy about that. So it doesn't look good for the conference, but overall, a really good football win for Oklahoma State.
Yeah. Yeah, enjoy the game, and I really enjoyed the fat fries at Buffalo Wild Wings. Shout out to Grant there.
Yeah,
Jesse,
good.
what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, even though it may be perceived as not great for the conference, I don't know that people had really high standards or hopes for A&M, given everything that's happened in the transfer portal, given the coaching change, and also just the fact that people sit out for bowl games, especially a bowl game that's not a playoff game. They're not going to risk what's going to happen to them their season next year. So I was relatively impressed with what A&M was able to pull together. It wasn't what I expected, even though I was so daggum close to getting that score almost perfect. That's okay though. So close. But they were relatively evenly matched. If you look at the stat line for the most part, I mean, both had 2 turnovers. Again, you can't have that, but you're having people play in a game that aren't used to playing or starting a game. And I also think, again, in a bowl game like this, the focus is not always there on just fundamentals and mechanics. So that's a little bit expected. Very close on first downs. And Oklahoma State did blow them a little bit out of the water in overall yardage. But if you're an A&M fan, you have to feel at least a little more encouraged. It wasn't the beating that you may have expected. So overall, maybe things might start to look up for them.
Yeah, they're ready for the Elko era to start, and we'll see how things
New
go.
year, new vibes. I don't know. Jimbo's not there. I'm trying to be encouraging.
And they
Yeah,
had him in the press box too, up there calling the game with him. It was really weird because you're not even like hired by the team. I mean, you're not officially on the team or the head coach yet, and you're doing radio like doing TV stuff. It was really odd. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, and I saw they were also interviewing him also recently, and he pulled a Coach O talking about how he was going to be all right with his buyout. They were saying congrats on the buyout, and he's like, thanks, I think I'll be all right. So imagine getting paid that to sit on your couch. So all right, let's
I
talk
imagine it
about
every day.
Yeah.
Let's talk about number 22 Clemson versus Kentucky in the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl. From Everbank Stadium in Jacksonville, Florida. Clemson winning this one 38-35. Matt is the only one to pick Clemson here. Oddly enough, this was Devin Leary's first bowl game that he's played in. This is his 6th year playing college football. So all other years he hasn't been able to play due to redshirting injury, or there was a COVID cancellation one year as well. A lot of opt-outs for Clemson, especially on defense. Kentucky fairly full strength. This one was pretty boring early on, but the offense exploded in the second half, especially Clemson, with 26 points in the fourth quarter. Phil Moffa's 4 touchdowns in this game are a Tax Slayer Gator Bowl record, including the 3-yard touchdown run with 17 seconds left in the game to get Clemson the win. So just wasn't meant to be for Kentucky, I guess. Jesse, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that one, I thought Kentucky might be able to pull it out. I was hoping they would, because I wanted to put a nail in Clemson's coffin. But the thing that stands out to me is, number one, 4 turnovers, right? Kentucky did so many good things in this game. So many encouraging things. They were rushing, they were receiving, they had good kick returns for a touchdown from Berrien Brown. They were able to sack Clemson's quarterback 8 times. They held Clemson to 4.6 yards per play for the game and all of 10 points throughout the first 3 quarters. That's so many good things. But there were also a lot of mistakes. And that's where they started to beat themselves. And you've got to just clean it up. They turned the ball over on 3 straight possessions in their own territory in the final little bit. Can't do that. Can't turn over the ball 4 times. I mean, it's got to be very frustrating for the Kentucky hopefuls, where you see something within your grasp. You're trying to finish out a season that's had some really disappointing moments, and you're putting together some really solid plays. And in the end, you that starts to beat yourself. You're the reason. And it's really disappointing for the Wildcats on that one. I was hoping they would be able to pull it out. I really wanted to just shut down Dabo Swinney, but what can you do? Berrien Brown, though, stellar performance from him. Really, really impressed.
Yeah. Matt, your thoughts on this one?
I picked Clemson, but deep down in my heart of hearts, I was hoping that Kentucky would find a way to get this thing done, and it didn't pan out. It looked like it was going to, but when you get outscored 28-14 in the fourth quarter, you can't win a football game that way. When you turn the ball over 4 times, 2 interceptions and 2 fumbles, you can't do that. You can't do that and survive anyway. And I want to take a minute to say hi to Mr. and Mrs. Klubnik, Kate Klubnik's mom and dad, because God knows ESPN loves showing those parents. They did it all last year during the Orange Bowl. They did it again this year too. And you can't do that. You can't let them outscore you 2-1 in the fourth quarter. Ray Davis gets 63 yards here. He averaged 4.8 a carry. Not great on 13 carries. It's not good. It's really not great numbers. And I feel bad for Kentucky's defense because they were flying in the backfield. I think the final stat was they had 12 tackles for loss. Usually, if you're in double digits on that tackle for loss, you're doing great.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it panned out, and it just unfortunately slipped away from Kentucky. And Coach Stoops gets another bowl loss.
Yeah. Yeah, rough one in the end, for sure. And to your point about Davis, I thought it was going to be the other way around. I thought that Davis's rushing attack would kind of open things up for Larry, but it almost ended up being the other way around because I think he started to get a few more successful rushes later on in the game, but not enough in the end. All right, let's move to Missouri versus Ohio State and the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, a New Year's Six Bowl from AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, in a riveting game, which Mizzou won 14-3. I got the point here. So I do want to start by reading a couple of the YouTube comments that we got for the because everyone they seemed to be, especially Ohio State fans, seemed to be so certain that Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to play. As a matter of fact, Mello 7969. Why does everyone assume Marv is sitting out? A bunch of laughing faces. We're going to be 100%. I love when outsiders give takes and don't know anything about OSU. Everyone is playing. Well,
no, they're not. They are not.
Does somebody want to tell him?
Yeah.
I think he already knows.
If he doesn't know by now, then he's not an OSU insider, apparently. So yeah. So in this one, like I said, the game was boring until the fourth quarter, where Mizzou finally started to run the ball with success with Cody Schrader, and Brady Cook made some clutch throws as well. Mizzou's defense, and I've kind of watched it all season, and it's been subtle, but the defense is swarming for Mizzou this year. And I know Ohio State had opt-outs and had to turn to Devin Brown. And then when he went out in the second quarter with a high ankle sprain, then freshman Lincoln Kineholtz was the next man up. But still, a lot of credit to this Mizzou defense for shutting down Ohio State, allowing only 203 total yards and 12 first downs. Matt, let's start with you on this one. What was your thoughts on the Cotton Bowl Classic?
First off, I want to go on record and unequivocally be clear on this. I don't know how in the heck Missouri got to 11 wins. I don't understand what happened. The world doesn't make sense to me. With that being said, this was an awful game. Just an awful game. You didn't have your first touchdown until 4 minutes and 19 seconds left in the third quarter. Like that is a stat. That is awful. That is not good football. The third down percentages were awful too. Missouri was 4 for 16 on third down. Ohio State was 2 for 15 on third down. This was an awful, ugly game. This is what I anticipated the Iowa Tennessee game to look like. And I actually texted that in our string. I said, apparently Ohio State and Missouri are cosplaying today. Or excuse me, Tennessee. You knew what I meant. They looked like what we were anticipating with the Tennessee game. Just an awful performance top to bottom by Ohio State. I know that Marvin Harrison sat. I know they had a couple more guys not get involved in this thing, but anemic isn't a strong enough word to talk about what this Ohio State offense looked like. When your leading passer has 86 yards, huge woof.
Yeah.
That's awful. That is just terrible offensive football. Ryan Day has to be pulling out his hair trying to figure out what in the world went wrong. And granted, kudos to Missouri. Their defense has been pretty stout this year. But man, not a pretty game. This is not what you anticipate from the Cotton Bowl when you get two, 10-win, 11-win teams. You're expecting some fireworks, and you didn't get it until late.
Yeah. New Year's Six Bowl. Yeah, you're right. Jesse, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think bowl games they're tough. And I think every year they just get a little bit tougher because you are seeing more guys sit out. And again, I see both sides of the coin. I completely understand why they do it. But also as a viewer, it gets kind of boring sometimes when, these stars that you follow that make the regular season so enjoyable don't show up, and they don't care because it just doesn't matter anymore. But yeah, I think Ohio State's defense was good. For what they were playing against, it was good. They were able to, hold and put pressure on Brady Cook, which is nice. Brady Cook ended up coming out pretty clutch in the end when he needed to be. And Mizzou's defense looked pretty good against a backup quarterback.
Yes.
Right? Is that how I say that? Yeah.
Yep.
Backup.
I mean, sure, the backup is probably still a 4 or 5 star talent, which is cool to shut that down. But again, it's not what you expect to see in the Cotton Bowl. Like Matt said, it's one of those things where congratulations. I know Eli Drinkwitz was so excited at the end, but at the end of the day, I don't think the Ohio State fans really cared. I don't
know. There were a lot of really upset Ohio State fans on Twitter the other day when I was checking. They're ready to send Ryan Day packing.
I know.
And the Lou Holtz meme is probably the funniest thing to come out of that game. Because remember how Lou Holtz was talking crap about Ohio State, about how they weren't tough, and Ryan Day had that whole deal like that. That's been really funny. But
I think Ohio State fans are more excited to cheer against Michigan than they were to watch their bowl game.
Yeah.
Well, that is probably true. I think it's just all part and parcel of what we're dealing with a lot of these bowl games, which we will talk about in the opinion segment. And I'm pretty excited to hear what you guys have to say on that. Next, Ole Miss versus Penn State in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, also a New Year's Six Bowl from Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. Ole Miss won this one 38-25. Jesse gets the point here. She's the only one to pick Ole Miss. Yeah, people were giving the edge to Penn State largely because of their defense in this one, but Ole Miss's offense really just kind of bullied them, with Jackson Dart accounting for 4 total touchdowns, 3 through the air and 1 on the ground. Ole Miss has you can kind of take this with a grain of salt. Recently, Ole Miss has something special kind of building down there, and the reason I say that in tandem with some of the transfer portal stuff that have been largely victories, although some losses. But this is the first time in its program's 129 seasons that Ole Miss has won 11 games. So that's pretty cool. And I know a lot of times we say, they've got something going on over there at Ole Miss. Look at all this that they did in the offseason. But I think there's a little bit, perhaps, more substance to it this year. Jesse, what were your thoughts on this one?
This is a historic season for Ole Miss. This is a historic, really, win for them. This is one of their best seasons. I mean, they had more wins this season than they've ever had. Ever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a really old program.
Yep.
But this one, I think this team is starting. They bought into Lane Kiffin. He is amazing at picking up transfers in the transfer portal. He's a great offensive mind. And this team, this season, this game felt like one of the best offenses that they've ever had. It truly did feel like Lane has started to cement himself into that program. And I think this game itself really showcased a lot of their offensive capabilities. And, this is a team that they won against Penn State, which is a very tough opponent. It's one where they were not expected necessarily to win. You have a QB in Jackson Dart that I didn't necessarily think was a stellar QB. I still don't know that I believe that, but he led his team to outscore a Heisman-led team 55-49 this season. And sure, there are going to be concerns on the offensive side of the ball. Absolutely. That's the way with every team. And we're going to talk about transfers later, but Lane Kiffin picks up the transfers. So any that he's losing, I think he's okay. I don't think he's upset about it. And it seems like on their roster, they have a mentality of, all right, if you're not going to do it, next man up, bring in someone else. If we can't score with you, we're going to score with someone else. And they've been able to do that. And it's pretty impressive. And I think everyone down in Oxford's really, really excited. And they're able to pull out some wins. I mean, this past season, we saw them get really, really close to the wire. And I didn't know that they'd be able to pull out a win, but they were able to finally just close it out and do it. And a bowl win like this over a really historic program like Penn State is a great look for Lane Kiffin. And I think it's going to put Ole Miss on the map. It's going to help with recruiting in the offseason. And it's obviously not hurting them in the transfer portal because he picked up a
Matt, your thoughts?
Just to kind of piggyback off what Jesse was saying, like Lane Kiffin is very rapidly making himself, like a pretty big name. I mean, Lane's been a big name for a while, but I feel like within the last 3 years, I mean, he had 10 wins in 2021. He had 11 wins this season. He had the 8-5 season last year. But I mean, when you look at his overall record, Ole Miss, he's 34-15. Yeah, that's pretty dadgum good. And I think any Ole Miss fan would be happy to say, you know what? Yeah, that sounds great. 34-15. This is a big signature win for them this season. 11 wins. Their only 2 losses are against really good teams. So, I mean, it's not like they lost to people they shouldn't have lost to. Jackson Dart is going to be a menace next season. I'm convinced of it. I think that then they pick up a pretty big name out of the portal as far as wide receivers go. They're shoring up some of their defense with a couple of guys from Tennessee, sadly. But I mean, they're going to be trouble next season. And with the expanded SEC and the expanded playoff, this is a team that if they can find a way to get into the playoff, they're going to be trouble. And they're going to be a problem for a lot of people. And I think Lane Kiffin is aware of that. And I think he's prepared to do what he needs to hopefully for Ole Miss fans is to get them into a national championship game, which I don't think Ole Miss has been in for a really, really long time. So, Yeah. Again, the situation around Quinshawn Judkins is going to be something we can talk about in a minute. It's going to be very interesting. But big quality win for Lane.
Yeah, for sure. And something to watch. All right, next Auburn versus Maryland in the TransPerfect Music City Bowl from Nissan Stadium in Nashville, Tennessee. Maryland winning this one 31-13. Matt, only one to pick Maryland, so kudos there, my friend. Um, Auburn, they had some key players out, but Maryland also without Talia Tagovailoa as they rotated their other quarterbacks as well. So really the story here is with Auburn with the 4 turnovers. I mean, including a 44-yard pick six of Peyton Thorne by Glendon Miller. Maryland with
How's it
1
feel?
turnover. Right. So it's really difficult to win a bowl game against a decent team when you're -3 in the turnover margin. So Matt, what were your thoughts on this one?
This game went about how I was expecting it to. I mean, Auburn is still a team trying to kind of find their footing. No offense to Auburn or to anybody on that roster, but they don't really have a quarterback. The offense is, struggled mightily. They're trying to find the right vibe about what they're trying to do offensively, and it's not clicked yet. I'm sure that that's going to be something that we're probably going to see get fixed over the next couple of seasons. But I can tell you right now that your offense can be fantastic, but if your defense gives up back to back to back touchdowns on the opening 3 drives, it's really hard to climb back into it after that. And Auburn struggled to do that. So, this is, a pretty rough loss for Auburn. They dropped to under 500 for the season. Where do we go from here? Who knows? I don't have a whole lot past that aside to say that hopefully Auburn's going to be able to bounce back, because a good Auburn is good for the SEC. I know Jesse would probably disagree with me in that regard, but it's good when Auburn is good. So
They play us hard every year regardless. So
yeah, that's because it's a rivalry game, and the records go out the window for rivalry games.
accurate.
Right. Jesse, your thoughts on the Music City Bowl?
I mean, you hit it on the head with the turnovers. Also, the 2 young men that we're used to seeing at quarterback for Auburn aren't playing at quarterback for Auburn. And turns out, in order to win a football game pretty handedly, you got to have people playing tight on both sides of the ball. You do need to have a little bit of a complete team. And it's like Matt said, if you're not playing defense, there's only so much your offense can do, and they start to get tired because they're out on the field really fast. So it's again, I'm struggling so much with these games because yes, we know that Auburn is not a complete team right now. They're struggling with some identity issues, some talent issues, and they're going to start to fix that with Hugh Freeze there, but he's going to need some time. But again, these games are not always representative of the teams that we've seen throughout the season, because not everyone's playing and not everyone cares.
Right.
Really hard.
So I'm not necessarily comparing the 2 institutions or the 2 coaches, but do you think that just because it's Hugh Freeze at Auburn, and I understand that obviously this is just 1 season, do you think because of the name, do you think he's afforded more time than, say, like a Billy Napier at Florida, who they kind of took a chance on?
I don't know, because with that bigger name comes higher expectations, right? So you've been successful at other programs relatively quickly, and you've taken a program like a Liberty and made it into something. Those expectations are high because when you come to Auburn, you still have 5-star talent, 4-star talent. You can still make something happen, but I almost think your leash might be shorter because the expectations are so high. And we've said it ad nauseum. It's the Saban effect. You come in, they expect you to win. You've got a season to suck. And then next season, if you suck, you're on a really short leash.
Right. Or in the Zach Arnett's case, it's just 1 season.
It's just 1 season. And you're
Matt, what do you think?
I don't know. We know that Hugh Freeze wins. It's just a question of riding the ship, getting the kids you want in there. And I know that that's the old rigmarole of college football is give the guy some time, let him work his cycles, yada yada. But I do think that Hugh Freeze would probably be given a little bit more slack than a Billy Napier or somebody along those lines. Only because he won at Mississippi State.
Ole Miss.
Sorry, Ole Miss. I got my Mississippi's mixed up.
One of the Mississippis.
It's been a long week. So he won at Ole Miss, and Ole Miss prior to that hadn't had a ton of success. So that's got to be worth something. So I think maybe they give him a little bit more time. It just kind of depends on the situation, the quality of those losses, if they have them, things like that. So yeah, I would say
you are against Alabama.
And that's the ultimate measuring stick too, is if they're able to compete with Bama, I think he gets more time. But if he comes out the next 2 seasons and gets nuked by Bama, I don't foresee that ending well.
And kind of something that's got lost in the mix is that loss to New Mexico State. New Mexico State, right?
That's off the radar now.
What made that start to fade away is playing Alabama so competitively,
right,
and almost beating us.
Right.
That in itself,
they should have beaten y'all.
I agree, Matt.
That in itself was like the anecdote,
right,
to that loss.
No, absolutely, 100%.
And it will be almost every year. Ask Gus Malzahn.
He made a career at beating Alabama.
I was going to say that gave him many extra years than he probably would have. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which was Georgia versus Florida State, Capital One Orange Bowl from Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, Florida. Georgia won this one 63-3. Matt gets the point here. So here's just some stats real quick. Georgia's 60-point margin of victory is the highest ever in a bowl game, breaking their own record of 58 against TCU in the national championship last year. For Florida State, it's the largest loss in program history. The Bulldogs have outscored their last 2 bowl opponents 128-10. 673 yards of total offense is a season high and a Bulldog Bowl record. Now, 23 Florida State players opted out for a total of only 53 scholarship players dressed for the game. And some of those had never seen the field in a college football game. Georgia's senior class finished with a school record 50 wins, including 2 national titles along the way. So get this, like at one point in this game, Drew Bobo, son of Mike Bobo, snapped the ball to Jackson Muschamp, Will Muschamp's son, who then threw it to Stetson Bennett's younger brother, Luke, in the freaking Orange Bowl. This is like Pee Wee football. All the coaches' sons are, and legacy players are getting the ball. So still, what a moment for those families. Kirby even joked after a good run by Jackson Muschamp that he looked a lot more athletic than his dad ever did. So, so now, a couple of shows ago, I talked about how I didn't expect Georgia to make the top 4. But the more I think about the mentality that goes into that, and granted, obviously we talked about how many Florida State players sat out, and that's not lost on me. But I think the mentality that goes into my own expectations of them not being included in the top 4, I think I've got to change my stance, because I realize, and this seems ridiculous now, that that's kind of a conditioned mentality that the committee has cultivated this year and really over several years.
Brainwashed, Wes.
Right? Like, so now that we've seen some of these games play out, like it just seems too obvious. If the committee wanted to put Bama in, again, no hate to Bama, I think they probably should have been there. Fine, but to put Texas in, who granted finished the season strong, but if we're looking back, they had a much worse loss than Georgia did. And it was to an Oklahoma team who had some bad losses as well. Georgia's lone loss of the season is by 3 points to a pretty good Alabama team. So when, and that game was when the key members of our receiving corps clearly weren't healthy, as you can see, you go back and look at the tape. I think that's an infinitely better loss than Texas. It should have probably been number 1, Michigan, number 2, Washington, number 3, Alabama, number 4, Georgia. People wouldn't have had to deal with an immediate Georgia-Bama rematch in this scenario either. Okay. But it's all a business. They were never going to let this happen. And we'll talk about this more in the opinion segment. But Jesse, what were your thoughts on this one?
You're right. They were never going to let that happen again. I mean, because, we've been there, but this was one of those where it was like, even before halftime, I was like, they're already dead. They're already dead. Good God, someone stop this now. This is just cruel.
Right.
Because it's gonna suck, right? As like a Florida State player, you have to finish the game. Someone has to go play. That sucks. You just want to go home. That's terrible. And I
just want to go home, coach.
I know. I just fake an injury so you can just go sit somewhere. Like, it's terrible. But I understand that 20-something player, however many players, sat out. But it wouldn't have mattered because their quarterback was going to be out anyways. And you can moan and complain and say, it doesn't matter. That doesn't prove the committee's decision. But it does, right? Because here's the thing. Other teams had people sit out and they didn't get massacred. And I understand they weren't playing Georgia necessarily, but you've got to put together complete football regardless. And I don't know that Florida State, even if those 20 players had gone in and played, that it wouldn't have been a similar situation, because I feel like it would have been, because at some point, golly, hopefully those players can be like, I don't know, maybe it's against the rules. Put me in, coach. At that point, it didn't matter. Break the rules. Who cares? They're dying. But this was not fun to watch. I stopped watching it. I was not entertained. I didn't have a dog in the fight. I was embarrassed because I was like, honey, help them, please. Someone do something, anything. And it wasn't happening. Whether you want to stand on moral high ground or not, whether you want to say they deserve to be there, sure, they did everything right. But at the end of the day, it's a business decision. And that game would have not gotten any viewers when it comes to playoff time, because after the first quarter, everyone would have turned it off and gone to bed or done literally anything else. So I'm sorry. Florida State, I'm sorry. You did what you were supposed to do. You absolutely did. But the proof was in the pudding. And rail and go on about people sitting out, whatever. Georgia's gonna be dangerous. Carson Beck's coming back next year. That's great for them. And my goodness, and Wes, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Brock Bowers has declared for the draft yet, but I think
he
did just
then
recently.
He has.
Goodness. It's a shame, but I mean, obviously it's expected. So
NFL,
I'm happy for him. So
salivating.
Yeah.
Get him.
Well, I mean, so Georgia had so many players that could have sat out too. I mean, look at Lad McConkey, who's been battling through injury all season. He played in this game, had a great game, had an amazing play that was supposed to be, I think, a backward pass that he was supposed to throw to somebody, and it broke down, and he weaved across the field and ended up scoring a touchdown on it. It was just,
if you want to play and you want to be there, and I think that's a great point. I think Kirby said it. I don't remember if it was during one of the breaks or
it's about another player, but I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Kirby was talking about what it means for this team to finish this out for their seniors. And we've talked about it before. Most of the time, it's their last game ever. They don't play anymore. Most people don't go to the NFL. And if you wanted to play and you wanted to be there and you truly felt like your team had something to prove, you would have been there.
Right. And if it's about us instead of about me, and again, not hating those who made the business decision to sit out, but yes,
but you would have been there.
Yeah. Matt, your thoughts?
I think Jesse said everything there is to say about this game. It was a snooze fest. I think we anticipated Georgia to win. I don't think anybody anticipated Georgia to beat them as bad as they did. This was the very definition of a curb stomping. Again, Nuke doesn't do a good enough job to kind of explain how this thing went down. Carson Beck, again, just like I just said about Jackson Dart, is a menace. He's going to be a problem. He's going to continue to be a problem, unfortunately, for everybody in the SEC. And Georgia looks like they're going to have a little extra fuel to the fire next season, because they're going to feel like they got snubbed. Wes, I understand where you're coming from with your argument about how you think Georgia should have been in. I still think the committee made the right decision to leave them out. even blowing out Florida State. I think if Florida State had a little bit more complete team, I think if there were a couple more extenuating circumstances, this game probably would have been closer to what my original prediction was, a 38-20, 38-10, something along those lines. It wouldn't have looked quite so lopsided. That being said, next year all of this is a moot point because next year we're expanding it to 12 teams,
To a
and then
certain
it won't
extent,
matter. To a certain extent, of course.
Yeah.
But again, is the 13th or 14th, 15th ranked team going to make it all the way to the final? Probably not. There are Cinderella stories, but they don't usually happen in football like that. That being said, Georgia gets a huge win. I know that this is one that they're gonna cherish for a while. Winning these big bowl games has become I don't want to say pedestrian to Georgia fans, but they're pretty happy with their lot in life. I feel bad for Florida State because after having such a successful season, and then that's how it ends. It's kind of like, ugh, that's kind of awful. But it is what it is, as the kids say.
It is. Well, I think we kind of beat that dead horse. So but we will talk a little bit more about bowl games a little bit later in terms of opt-outs and all that good stuff. So let's move to Wisconsin versus LSU, the ReliaQuest Bowl from Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, Florida. LSU winning this one 35-21. Jesse gets the point here. So twice in this game, Wisconsin had leads of 14 points, but both times LSU found a way to even things up. It's funny. It seems like it kind of took LSU a while to get comfortable on offense. But I guess as we mentioned with opt-outs, it's kind of the nature of the business there. You're sort of learning as you're going and gelling as you're going as a team as well. Eventually, Nussmeier seemed to get more relaxed and was able to connect on more shots downfield than this one. So in the end, LSU scored the only touchdown of the fourth quarter, and that would be enough to win this one. Matt, what were your thoughts on the ReliaQuest Bowl?
I was anticipating LSU to win this thing. I was actually kind of shocked Wisconsin gave them as much of a run as they did. Because Wisconsin went into this game 7-5. They hadn't looked like super successful this season, aside from a couple of little blurbs here and there. And you know how Big Ten teams are. Once you get out of that top echelon of 10 Big Ten teams, there's a pretty dramatic drop off as far as quality of teams go. So for Wisconsin, yeah. For Wisconsin to go toe-to-toe with LSU and almost win this thing's pretty impressive, I think. LSU finds a way to get it done. A little bit of a struggle on defense. I don't recall a lot of information about the Badgers this season. But giving up almost, what was it? It was I just had the stat in front of me. I lost it. How many total yards?
They gave up over 500 yards of total offense.
506 yards total offense given up is pretty bad look. Not to mention they did fire their defensive coordinator, I do believe, if I remember correctly, just the other day. So they're moving in a different direction for that. But they still got the win, and at the end of the day, that's the only stat that really matters.
Yeah. Jesse, your thoughts on this one?
I can tell you, even Wisconsin fans were shocked at how well they competed. I have several friends that are Wisconsin alumni or fans from Wisconsin, and they were shocked. They did not expect that. And honestly, the game had given them a little bit of hope. So to lose, that was really devastating for them. But Garrett Nussmeier impressed me. I think he made a really strong case for him to be their starter next year because obviously Jane Daniels is not coming back. And I don't know that I was 100% convinced on how he was going to do, but as a redshirt sophomore, he completed 31 of his 45 pass attempts for 395 yards and 3 passing touchdowns. Had an interception. Oh, well. And right now, I think Vanderbilt's quarterback, AJ Swan, is transferring to LSU next season. So we could be seeing a decent quarterback kind of back and forth and see there might be some QB competition there. Interesting. But this game made a really good case for Nussmeier. In my opinion, he was able to make some impressive kind of back shoulder throws, and he was accurate with the football. So encouraging that they potentially have some options there next season at LSU. Their defense was successful. I mean, they haven't been, LSU's defense hasn't been standout this season, regardless. But it looks like a lot of their younger players were doing pretty well. I mean, they struggled still a little bit, but I think they were able to go in, they saw their struggles and make some adjustments. So maybe there's some hope in the younger players there, the younger talent for Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers. And then going back to the offense is going to look very different next year. And it's going to have to. And the defense is going to have to look very different next year because Jaden Daniels is not coming back. And his offense, he was able to bail them out a lot with his mobility and his legs. If he couldn't make a pass, he was able to make a play happen or extend a play, extend a drive because he could run it. Nussmeier and even Swan are not the same type of quarterback. No one's Jaden Daniels, right? They're not going to be able to run the offense the same way, call plays the same way as they would for Jaden Daniels. They're not going to be able to get the yardage out of them because those guys are just not mobile quarterbacks to the same extent. Not to say they couldn't learn to be, but inherently they're not. So we're going to have to see, the running backs start to step up, wide receivers start to step up. I'm interested to see how Brian Kelly adjusts the offense next season, knowing that it's going to be very different and it's not going to be the mobile quarterback offense he's been used to at LSU.
That's very true, and I'm like you. I'm very curious to see what they do at starting quarterback. And I agree. I think Nussmeier should be the guy. I think he's waited his turn. We've seen him kind of sitting in the background there for a good while, and I believe he deserves his chance if this is any indication as well. So let's move to Iowa versus Tennessee in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. From Camping World Stadium in Orlando, Florida. Tennessee won this one 35-0. That's not a typo. Matt got the point here. So this one, it seemed like it was like a slow, subtle domination by Tennessee. Started off with some good offense by Nico in Tennessee, and then in which Matt, you can speak a little bit more in a second about the introduction of Nico to the world. And then Iowa's just not built to come back from a multiple score deficit. I think they even put in the backup quarterback, and he had a few good throws here and there, but overall, they're not built that way. They also turned the ball over twice, resulting in a touchdown in the second half, including a pick six. Matt, let's start with you first, and you're a Tennessee fan. What's your thoughts on this one? How did you think Nico looked? What you got?
Well, I can tell you that I didn't have a chance to watch this until later. I listened to most of this on the radio on the drive back from Atlanta because we had spent New Year's Eve in Atlanta with some friends. But I was ecstatic with the way we looked in this game. This is a Hawkeyes team that defensively is ranked, according to the last line of stats, was ranked 7th in the nation. They averaged giving up about 282 yards a game. And they didn't give up a ton of touchdowns this season. Big Ten defenses have a reputation for being kind of stingy. And Tennessee came out, and granted, I'm not going to say Tennessee lit them up completely. Nice cat, by the way, Jesse. Mm-hmm. But Nico comes in, Iamaleava. Did I say that right? Iamaleava. Aha, I got there.
I was going to get you to do a tutorial for us. So,
listen, I said that like 19,000 times on the car ride back from Atlanta the other day, trying just to get it right because I knew I was going to have to say it. But Nico comes in and he gets the start here. Joe Milton decides to opt out to give the young kid a chance. Plus, I think Joe Milton's thinking about the draft, which kudos to him. Best of luck, Joe. But Nico looked good. I mean, he went 12 for 19. He threw for 151 yards, and he got a touchdown. He also used his feet to score a touchdown, 3 touchdowns on the ground. He had 27 yards, but they were short runs, but they were pretty impactful. So Nico, this is definitely a little bit of a coming out party for him. He's very hyped up. There are a lot of people really excited to watch him play, myself included. And if you had checked Vol Twitter, the Polynesian prince, the prince who was promised, Nico Suave, as they like to call him, is the second coming of Peyton Manning. And I'm going to go ahead and stop you right there, guys. We need to calm down. don't get me wrong. I like Nico's play style. I think he's great. He ended up getting the MVP for this game, which I didn't agree with, by the way, and I'll come to that in a second. But I mean, he's looking good. The question is, how good is he going to look against an SEC defense? How's it going to look when he gets popped in the mouth? Because he was pretty safe in this game. I don't think Iowa, if they did get a sack, it wasn't a very difficult one. I can't find the stat now, but it's going to be something to look at. The other name I want to talk about here is Dylan Sampson. 20 carries for 133 yards. He didn't get into the end zone, but I've been big on Sampson all season. I've been big on Sampson in this bowl game. I'm going to be big on Sampson next season. He is strong like Hercules, and he is going to run people over and make people miss. Sampson, I didn't want to go that obvious, a little too on the nose, but you get the idea. He's going to be problems for SEC defenses next year. The wide receiver core looked like they were a little bit more in tune in this game. It's going to be interesting to see how they look in the offseason. The other big name that I want to make sure that we holler at, this is who I thought should have been MVP for this game, is James Pierce Jr. He had a sack, a fumble, a caused fumble, and an interception for a pick six in this game. And the cat was flying around the field all day, every day. He's been great for the defense this season. I'm very excited to see what he's going to look like next year after he's had another offseason to kind of get ready, because he is coming back. I don't think he's going into the draft quite yet. I think he's only a sophomore. But yeah, big win for Tennessee. Get on the hype train, because it's going to be interesting next year.
Yeah. So despite the Cheez-It not having an edible mascot at this game, Jesse, what were your thoughts on this one?
They did have barbers on the sideline, though.
They did.
Putting Cheez-Its into people's hair. So that was
saw that.
Ramel Keaton had one of those. It was interesting.
I loved that Iowa, they have a tradition, for those that don't know and don't follow the Big Ten. The Iowa football stadium is actually overlooked by the Children's Hospital, and they start every game and they wave to the kids, and kids can see, and it's lovely. And they did that via video call this time, so that they could still wave to the kids, which I thought was really, really lovely.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that. But other than that, Iowa did exactly what we thought Iowa would do, which was not much. And it was very boring. They turned over the ball 3 times, and Tennessee did exactly what they should do. And I have nothing else to add to Matt's analysis, because this too was boring.
It's another one of those.
I loved it. I enjoyed every minute of it. It was great.
Yeah, when it's your team in the blowout, it is. That's how you want it.
It's a lot more fun. Yeah. See, Wes knows, because his team blew a team, and Jesse, I'm sure you know that. Oh,
I've been there before.
Yep.
Sorry.
In the national title game, nonetheless.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of which, let's get to Alabama versus Michigan, the CFP semifinal at the Rose Bowl game presented by Prudential from the Rose Bowl.
It's just the freaking Rose Bowl.
How awkward was that coin toss at the beginning when they're like, the Rose Bowl commissioner, and then he was like, and the this person from Prudential, and they're like,
I loved it.
Coin.
I loved
and
it.
Rose
How
Bowl
even
guys like, I'll hand it to her, so she can hand it to you. Silly.
I loved how even the ref got into it, though. He was well coached on how to say it. It was presented by Prudential. He did the whole spiel. It was great.
He did.
It's from the Rose Bowl.
From the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California.
It's just the Rose Bowl. It is just the freaking Rose Bowl. Just call it the Rose Bowl.
Matt is the only one to get to pick Michigan, so he got the point here. I would go through my analysis, but I feel like it would be better coming from Jesse firsthand. So what do you got, Jesse? What are your thoughts on this one?
Jesse, I feel like should I get some like sad like Sarah McLachlan music in the background? I feel like I should.
Arms of an Angel.
No, because I may surprise you.
Oh.
Maybe. Was I disappointed? Absolutely. It's worse to lose in overtime.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Truly, because you have the hope that you can win, right? Yeah. Losing in overtime sucks, because you've just added more anxious time for me, and that's not fun. I don't like anxious time. And I had a lot of ups and downs in this game and a lot of hope. And let's start from the beginning. Okay.
Jesse has prepared a statement.
I truly, our center is a problem. To start from
Well,
the beginning, must also
he's in the
start
portal now, so you don't have to worry about him anymore.
No one is sad that he's in the portal. I assure you. We are so used to having a consistent center. And I think center is one of those positions that you overlook how big of a deal it is, because it happens just over and over and everything's usually fine. And when you have someone who's not doing it well, it's a big problem. And it shows you, number one, the center is the only person who is guaranteed to touch the ball every play.
It's like being, so I've done a lot of IT work and running sound in my life. Those are two jobs where if you do your job well, no one knows you're there. But if you don't, everyone knows that you're there.
And everyone hates you.
Yeah.
And this wasn't the first game that we've had problems at center. I understand too. Some of it is on Jalen to make sure that he's also paying attention. I get that. But the last play of the game, because everyone's like, was that, a design quarterbacks? No. That was RPO. You look and you go wide, that was RPO. But the snap was low and bad. And by the time we got it, those outside rushers, they were already closing in. There was nowhere to go. We couldn't execute the way we wanted to. He couldn't go anywhere else.
Not to mention, I'm sure it causes you to even, depending on where the rushers are coming from, you tend to panic a little bit as well, even if they're not super like on you in the moment.
And they were on us all game. Kudos to Michigan. They got to him almost every single time. And to Jalen, do not take the loss of yards. Please throw it away. Please throw it away. Don't take 20 yards loss.
This is not a repeat from week 2.
I beg of you. Please.
He's young. He's young.
And I'm not against Jalen Milroe. I'm there. He's the guy. I get it. Our offensive line has improved significantly from where we were, but good gracious, did they not miss some people? At one point, literally, it was just like they were looking around like, was I supposed to have him? Because I thought maybe you did. They looked gassed. All right. Slim down, boys, because you got to be able to move. And they were not. And it was a problem. Jermaine Burton was not able to be effective. They were on top of him all night. There was great coverage. Their secondary did a great job. Truly. We were not able to throw the deep ball like we wanted to, like we've been able to do a lot. I think Jace McClellan had a great game despite, losing. He really did. He had a great game. He was able to run the ball pretty successfully. Obviously had 2 touchdowns. And Isaiah Bond, again, didn't get into the end zone, but he was pretty successful as well. Praise the dear Lord above for Will Reichard, our Lord and Savior. Dear God, we put him in some terrible positions and he still made it happen. That man, NFL, please, somebody is going to snag him and be very, very, very happy. He's a historic player with his stats, obviously. And I will address now, everybody. Well, first I want to address this. Okay. I have a couple things I want to address. If you have not seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit, this is the villain. This is what Jim Harbaugh was giving all evening. Not only identical.
He's been giving that for 5 years at this point.
He looked identical to Christopher Lloyd here. I digress. I have a couple issues with anybody that covered this game from a broadcast standpoint and with Michigan and the way I get why they're doing it, but I just want to clarify some points. Cheating is not adversity. Okay. Let me just stop you right there.
We had to overcome some adversity.
We overcame adversity.
Distractions would have been the better word.
No. You didn't overcome adversity. Adversity is, oh God, the whole team got COVID every week. That's adversity. All right. Oh no. All of a sudden, we can't keep the lights on. And they're having to take all the funding from the football program, and we had to start a GoFundMe. Adversity. Okay. You did not face adversity. You created a problem. Everyone else who lost because you cheated faced adversity. You were their adversity. Cheating is not adversity. Let's call it what it is. And they just glossed over it. It's adversity. We know who we are. Blah, 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 blah. Michigan is facing allegation. Michigan is facing evidence, is what they're facing. So
the adversity thing reminds me of like the friend who's like always talking about how they hate drama so much. I'm like, dude, you caused the drama. It's
you. That I was yelling the whole pregame. I cannot. We're so glad to be here because we face so much adversity. Really? Because I'm sure there are teams out there that actually faced adversity.
Yeah.
How about a team that their Heisman contender quarterback got his leg absolutely shattered in the conference championship? That would be, the game before the conference championship. That's adversity.
That's adversity. How about the kid on Washington who his dad died midway through the season?
That's adversity.
Adversity
would be categorized as adversity.
I swear that is like your cheating is a 1% prob. Get out of here. No, that's a first world problem.
Michigan is the 1%.
You're the 1%. That's because you're the 1% that cheated. No.
It is a weird world that we live in where that's just sort of skirted around and allowed as that. Like, what? No, it's not.
The whole time on ESPN, they're like, oh, blah, blah, allegations, oh, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Sure.
They're trying to keep it clean because they don't want to offend anybody. And
fine, whatever. Yeah. Well, all of their issues, all of their adversity offends me. Secondly, I will say this, and people will say all day long, we didn't deserve to be there, whatever. We had so many fundamental issues. Our center, for number one, and that wasn't just unique to this game. Fundamental issues at center, offensive line, a lot of quarterback needing to grow up and figure it out. And we still made it to the playoffs. I'm okay. At the end of the day, with all of these fundamental issues, we were still able to put together a season and make it to the playoffs.
With all of that adversity, Jesse.
With all of that
adversity.
So much
adversity. That's the name of the episode.
We're okay. We're honestly, Bama, we're okay. We still made it. With all of that, guys, we're fine. Did it look a little bit like week 2? Maybe, but we still held Michigan and we took the number 1 team to overtime with all of those issues. We beat the previous number 1 team to get to this number 1 team. Bama, we're okay. It's okay. That's fine. Did I want to lose? No. Michigan did what they needed to do in the moments they needed to do it. And we didn't. But we still got there. And it's real easy to hate from outside the playoff. But we're going to be okay.
And also in week 3, if we would have asked you the same thing, you would probably been like, there's no way we're making it even close. I would have
shut the computer down and been like, have you seen our adversity?
Right. After that South Florida game. Yeah. Matt, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think Jesse said pretty much everything there is to be said. I do have a couple things, though. Number one, I think I've been very clear about my feelings about Nick Saban over the past, 5 years we've been doing this podcast.
Both of these head coaches, you've been very vocal.
I have been very vocal in how much I despise the ground that they walk on. That being said, I think this is probably one of the best coaching jobs that Nick Saban's done. When we looked at how we just talked about this, when we looked at how Bama was in week 1 and 2 and 3, if you would have said they would have taken the number 1 team in the nation in the CFP semifinal to overtime and still only lose by 7, I don't think we were going to say that. So I think Saban deserves a lot of kudos. Is this the way that you want things to end? No. I think this is a great retiring point for Nick. I think he needs to go ahead, hang it up, hang the keys over to the
Great
next poor schlub that's going to take over. I think you can go out on top. So kudos to you, Nick. Congratulations on your retirement. The other thing, just the nuts and bolts, not butts and bolts, nuts and bolts of this game. Michigan has proven that they're hard to beat. Yes, there is some controversy and some adversity and all sorts of other ridiculous things that are surrounding khaki pants and the whole thing that's going on there. It's not going to matter in a couple weeks because if they do win the national championship, he's going to be moving to San Diego to get a big payday from the Chargers, allegedly. So anyway,
who are not in San Diego anymore? Where are the Chargers nowadays?
They're in LA. My fault.
That's right.
They're in LA. My bad. Because LA is a big enough market for 2 teams, apparently. 3 teams. They have 2 teams. The Raiders moved to Vegas. Anyway, that being said, like Michigan was trouble. Here's a stat for you. Bama had 1 tackle for loss in this game. Michigan had 10. Bama had 1 sack in this game. Michigan had 6. That right there was the separation between these 2 teams, and it still went to overtime. So again, just like Jesse said, kudos to Bama. This is just, they came up a little bit short. I would have been very interested to see what this game would have looked like if we'd got the second or third overtime, especially with the the newer overtime rules about how after third overtime
you have to to go to 4. So
yeah.
I mean, but if we had done what we needed to do in the 4th quarter, close to time expiring, when we had them at 4th and 2. If we had shut it down, then we win. It's over. It's over. If we were able to execute on 4th and 2, it's done. But we didn't execute when we needed to execute.
Yeah,
that's it. That's it right there.
It was an interesting one to watch for sure because it was surprisingly, to me anyways, maybe not to other people, but how Michigan was able to your point, Matt, control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, really. But on offense, they were able to, push that D-line around. Corum had some great runs because of it. And then it's like, I don't know really what happened. If I know Alabama adjusted, which I'm sure they did in the 3rd quarter because they started to kind of find the edge on some rushes, and then they sort of kind of started to play the field position game. There was a lot of punting there for a while, and Bama kind of pinning Michigan deep in a lot of instances. But then, as you mentioned, close to the end of the 4th, it's almost like something clicked again, and Michigan was able to kind of get that push at the line of scrimmage again, which kind of allowed them to get some of those late scores, including the one in overtime. But let's not forget, Michigan also had some terrible special teams plays. Special teams haunted them all night almost, including a muff punt that resulted in Alabama's first touchdown.
That was a mess.
It was
the almost maybe safety.
That the game almost ended that way.
Literally, I thought the safety was going to save us. I thought we were about to
right at the end,
that game and give the MVP award to the kid on that side, the freshman on that side.
Can you imagine what was going through that kid's mind as the ball is, bouncing around there and he's trying to pick it up right before oh man, I can't imagine. But they had the botched extra point attempt. Remember that?
Yep.
And then they had the field goal attempt that hooked wide left. So they had.
We almost started on an interception. The first play of the game was this close to being an interception. I mean, it was called and then reversed, but
right.
Yes, right.
Yep. So yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to stop there because we have a little bit more to talk about in some of these other segments. But yeah, I mean, it it was a wild game from
It
someone
was a great
who,
game too.
I was gonna say, from someone who wasn't necessarily like super like Bama has to win or whoever has to win. It was a great game to watch for sure. It was
Yeah.
exciting. Um, all right, so that is all the bowl games. SEC went 5-4 in bowl games this season, so not
Ouch.
great, not terrible, but not great. And so Matt, I don't know that you've seen this yet, and I didn't mention it on purpose in case you haven't seen it.
I just looked.
But you cleaned house in the bowl pick'em, and
Oh,
so
I
you
love it.
erased a 10-point deficit, and we are now tied, my friend, at 50
Yep.
apiece. So, the next game, we're gonna make picks for the national championship, and then I think we should probably, just to kind of go ahead and put it in your mind for later. I think we should probably pick maybe how many yards Penix will have in the air. It's just as a tiebreaker in
Ooh.
case we happen to
Ooh, that's a good one.
pick the same
Mm,
score, or the same differential,
that's
and it works
tough.
out like that. We're
That's
gonna have to
tough.
figure out a tiebreaker anyway. So, all right, let's go ahead and talk about a quick news segment here.
Here's the news.
All right, so we mentioned Quinshon Judkins announced he'll enter the transfer portal. Today, CBS listed Alabama, Auburn, Florida State, Michigan, and Tennessee as possible destinations, because I know Tennessee's got a few running
Mm-mm.
backs who are, you don't want
Mm-mm.
that. Okay, we'll get
Mm-mm.
there. Although I have seen LSU and Oregon listed. Matt, you had a pretty big reaction to Tennessee. What are you thinking?
First off, no disrespect to Quinshon Judkins. He's an amazing football player. But when you look at some of the little ancillary things that have kind of popped up since he made that announcement, I
Jackson
don't want
Dart?
him coming. Yes, Jackson Dart. God, it's hard to talk today. Jackson Dart and his little cryptic Tom Brady talking about selfish players in
Hmm.
an interview clip thing, which he then deleted a little bit later. Plus,
But it's never
some
deleted from the internet.
some reports about Judkins openly questioning things from Lane Kiffin during the bowl
Hmm.
game and yelling
How
at the
the
offensive
offenses run.
coordinator, and just there's a lot of smoke, and typically where there's smoke of that type there's some fire, and I love Dylan Sampson, and I don't want to mess with a good thing, so he stay away from Rocky Top, please, Quinshaw.
Okay,
Go
what?
go go to Florida State. They could use you.
All right, well, let me take that same approach. Obviously, Alabama was on that list. Jesse, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, I don't like all the things that we're starting to hear, but at the same time, I think we see players like this, and I think if there's anybody that can whip them into shape and make them into a team player, it might
That's
be Nick
true.
Saban.
Yeah.
And we just had Roydell Williams declare that he's actually going into the transfer portal. He was our RB2. Jason McClellan was definitely RB1. So I don't know. I'm open to it, but I also, he's really good. Jermaine Burton is great, but his attitude pisses me off. And I don't think it's representative of who we are as an institution or a football team. So if maybe Judkins just didn't gel with his team, or there's always two sides to a story, I don't know. But Nick Saban might be the one that can get his buy-in. I certainly like his talent. I think Ole Miss will be just fine without him, because to be honest, they didn't run him much this season anyways.
Right, not as much as we would have thought. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Georgia's not on this list. I would be happy if he did, because like I said, he's one of the top running backs and one of the top talents. I think he really didn't. I think we haven't seen what he can do yet, because I
Yeah,
don't
I think
know
you're
that
right.
Ole Miss had the line to to make the holes for him to run through and all that stuff. So, and then also you really can't, because of attrition throughout the year, you can't really have too many running backs in the room,
Yeah.
because you never know who's going to go down. So, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, wherever he lands, it's going to be they're going to benefit, but it
Be a
will
great fit
be.
in Auburn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as I say, that was also listed, and
Build a whole
so
offense around that kid in Auburn.
Yeah.
yeah,
I
you
don't think
really could.
LSU is a good choice for him, seeing how Brown did in the bowl game. I don't know that. I think he's already on the team. That might be someone that they would go with as an RB1. Oregon is absolutely going to have to adjust their offense because Bo Nix is not going to be there next year. I'm pretty sure he's exhausted every little bit of eligibility that he has left. And they're going to need to figure out who's going to be at QB. So that might be a place for him. I don't know. Maybe he can go to UCF and join our friend from Arkansas.
Oh yeah, KJ Jefferson.
KJ
They're building
Jefferson.
something down there at UCF. You never know.
I don't
You
understand.
can claim another national title. So
I don't get it.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see where he goes, and then it'll be interesting to see how he fits in with the culture wherever he goes. So, all right. Well, let's get into a quick speed round here.
Speed round.
All right. So, real quick, and we talked about this a little bit, but I don't think we got real in depth. So, I'm curious what y'all think. In the Rose Bowl between Alabama and Michigan, do y'all think that the better team won, or was this just a bad game for Bama? And we've seen this scenario with a lot of matchups this season where a team just had a bad game. But what do y'all think? Do you think that the better team won, or is this just kind of a one-off bad performance by Bama? Whoever wants to answer.
Be a better team, to be a great team, you have to execute when you're supposed to execute. And we didn't do that. I don't want to blame this on, it's not like we did one stupid thing. There were several things that added up, but also we didn't stop them when we needed to, and we didn't contain them like we needed to. They put pressure on us the whole game, and they played a great game. So I think to be the better team in a game, you execute when you're supposed to execute, and we didn't do that. They were the better team in that game.
Matt?
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at how Michigan was able to execute in those critical moments, I think Michigan's the better team in this game. Does Michigan win 9 out of every 10 of these games? I don't know about all that. But Michigan executed. They were the better team on that evening. So,
yeah, I agree. But I would say that I think Bama did have a bad game. But I think we've also kind of said throughout the season that it will depend on which Bama team shows up with a lot of these different games,
Absolutely.
And depending on which one shows up, that's what's going to happen. And I think when there's that much in doubt, that makes it tough. And then ultimately, because of that, you'd have to say that it's probably Michigan. They had the more kind of consistent. Now you could argue why they had a consistent season. Maybe there's some extra.
I mean, they've got talent on their team. There's no doubt. They've got great players on their team. There's no doubt.
And we've said that a lot about. It is a shame because when I watched the game, I feel like they have a great group of kids on the Michigan team. It's just the adults who mess it up for everybody.
They've got a cloud hanging over their head with
Absolutely.
all these allegations. And if you take that off if you take that whole situation out of the picture, this is a red letter sort of situation for Michigan. This should be one of the more celebrated seasons they've had in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always going to be that lingering doubt. Did they cheat? Did they use, stolen signs? What's that look like? And that's going to be a problem.
Yeah,
it's going to be a problem.
It's going to be an issue, but their defense absolutely watched film on us and they executed it very well.
Mm-hmm. All right, another one. This is the first time the SEC will not have a team representing the conference in the national championship since 2014, when Ohio State beat Oregon 42-20 in the CFP's inaugural season. Does this indicate a shift of power away from the SEC, or is this just a hiccup and we'll be back next year? What do y'all think?
I can't say what will happen next year. It's expanded. It's different. I mean, obviously, I think because it's expanded, we'll have an SEC team in the playoffs for sure. But the national championship, I have no idea what's going to happen. It's going to be big. There's more teams. Who the hell knows? But it's going to be awesome.
And conferences are having more and more teams in them. So it's yeah. Matt, what do you think?
I don't think this, pretends some sort of shift in the conference. I think, or in the on the landscape at least. I think this is just a situation where it's a down year in the SEC. I mean, we went 5-4 in the bowls, So yeah, I think this is just a situation where, just a rough year for us. We'll bounce back. We always do.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think this kind of spells any kind of doom for the SEC, or that they won't be, back in the national title game anytime soon. Um, I think you saw, a few SEC teams that were right there near the top this year that could have easily, been there. But, with the expanded playoff, which, granted isn't the be all end all fix, but I think that definitely is going to give rise to more SEC teams making it further into the discussion. So, yeah, I would say that this doesn't mean SEC's done. We'll definitely be back. And like you said, Jesse, it's not like you can predict the future, but I think that we'll still, put a good effort together next year. So I say we like I'm on the field, but you know what I mean.
It's the royal
Um,
we.
yes, the royal we. Okay. So real quick, I have an opinion segment here that I'm very curious to what y'all think.
Sir, if I may venture an opinion.
I'm not really interested in your opinion, 3PO.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right, so this one could be a loaded opinion, but Coach Kirby Smart had this to say after the blowout win in the Orange Bowl against Florida State.
People need to see what happened tonight, and they need to fix this. It needs to be fixed. It's very unfortunate that they, who has a good football team and a good football program, are in the position they're in. And everybody can say it's their fault and it's their own problem. All right? And everybody can say that we had our guys and they didn't have their guys. I can listen to all that. But college football has got to decide what they want. And I know things are changing. And I think things are going to change next year. And you know what? There's going to still be bowl games outside of those. People got to decide what they want and what they really want to get out of it. Because it's really unfortunate for those kids on that sideline that had to play in that game that didn't have their full arsenal. And it affected the game 100%.
All right. So in that vein, obviously he mentioned there's going to be, even with an expanded playoff, there's going to be games outside of those. But I want to ask y'all, how can we make bowl season better? Obviously, we've mentioned several games this bowl season that were just super boring. We had tons of opt-outs, and this has become a yearly thing now. But like, how can we improve it? Because so far, or especially lately, since we've gone to, the bowl games that I don't want to say they don't matter, but in reality, a lot of these situations they don't in terms of competition. Now you could argue with, like sponsors and things like that. Yeah, they absolutely care. But in terms of competition, it really doesn't matter. So how can we make bowl season better and kind of improve some of those things?
In reality, you
I know what
can't.
I think. I want to know what y'all think.
In reality, you can't. Like legally, logistically, you can't. You can't force them to play. At the end of the day, yes, rules have changed with NIL. They're still amateur players. They're there to play in a regular season, and you can't mandate necessarily that they play in a bowl game. They can fake an injury if they really don't want to play. There's literally nothing you can do. You can't inspire someone to play. Even if you make them play, they may not play their best, and then they'll just be pissed off out there. Outside of literally paying them to play, you can't do it.
Is there a way that we can incentivize them outside of money?
But like, I mean, they're already getting free school.
Yeah.
They're already getting free food. They already get clothes. They already get NIL money, and they want to
penthouse apparently if you're Caleb Williams.
Yeah, they want to continue to get NIL money, so they want to remain healthy. They don't want to risk this. What do you do to make this game feel more important? You make it a playoff game. They're already doing that. The other ones, I understand, and I feel the exact same way that Kirby does. I do, and so many other coaches have voiced concerns, and I get it, and I'm in your camp with you. But I don't, outside of getting rid of these, which they will not do because they make too much sponsor money, there is nothing to do.
Matt, how do we make bowl season better?
I tend to agree with Jesse. I don't know if there is anything you can do. I mean, once you get outside the playoff, that it's kind of one of those catch-22s. I mean, you have these bowl games, but then you have to put gimmicks with them to make people interested in them. Great
Edible
example
mascots.
is the Pop-Tart Bowl. I mean, you had the only thing that came out of that story was an edible mascot, which, by the way, was just horrendous and awful to watch a team just eviscerate and eat up a poor Pop-Tart. But regardless, I don't know if you can. I think the problem is it's the law of diminishing returns. We've got too many bowl games. They make money, yeah, sure, but the more you get, the cheaper they get. In the aspect that you don't get that return of satisfaction like you did. If you look at like how many bowls there were in like 1980, there was like 19. You know, in 2003 there's like 26, I think. We're up to like 43 bowl games. I mean, they're playing a bowl game pretty much every day after the season wraps and after Army Navy play. We've got bowl games coming out our ears. The problem is that, you know, when you go to that 12-team playoff, well, you're going to have those 6 games. What about the other 30 some odd bowl games? They're going to matter even less. But regardless of that, I think the only way you're going to keep kids from opting out of games is to put the stakes on the line. You've got to have somebody that has an opportunity to play for a national championship, to play in the playoff. That's the only way you're going to keep them from being in that situation. And again, I don't blame the kids for wanting to sit out. Like, who wants to, you know, you've got a chance to be a second, third round pick. You've got NFL teams that have said, hey, when you come out, we're going to give you a look. Like, who wants to blow out their knee for the Texas Bowl? Like,
We've seen it.
And we've seen it 1,000 times. Some poor kid goes out there and gets absolutely eviscerated during a play, and then he has to. We saw that with Joe Milton, or not Joe Milton, excuse me, Hendon Hooker. Granted, that was regular season, but again, that still affected his draft stock. So I mean, we've seen it 1,000 times, and I don't blame him.
What happened to Matt Corral in his bowl game? It didn't matter.
That too.
Yeah.
Same.
Maybe if we decide that we're
him.
going to have a celebrity guest kicker instead of a picker, and then like every PAT or field goal has to be made by like Danny DeVito. I don't.
Oh my God.
I don't.
So
know.
if we get getting the players to play, let's just get people to watch. However, we can do
Well,
that.
I'm saying like you get a chance to hang out with Danny DeVito. Like maybe you want to.
Oh yeah, that's true.
You don't travel unless you play.
Here's the thing: if it's an interesting matchup, people are going to watch a game. Like Tennessee or Iowa, like that wasn't a huge matchup, but a lot of people watched that game because it was interesting to people. When you get like Northwestern and NC State, nobody's going to watch that. Those aren't big markets. You got to have interesting matchups. You've got to have some stakes on it. If there's no stakes on the game, nobody's going to watch it. Which is the reason why they need to get rid of the Bahamas Bowl and the Gasparilla Bowl and the ReliaQuest Bowl, and it's just go back to having 15 to 20 bowl games that matter.
Yeah.
And everybody else, you had a great season. Sorry, you didn't.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because you Grant and I talked about this during the A&M game about how yes, the sponsors and people want you know, they're going to be concerned about making money off of these games and things like that, and they don't want them to go away because of that annual attention that they get and stuff like that. But this is not, like I said when we discussed it, Matt, this is not new information. I'm sure this has been pitched out there 1,000 times, but I mean, to me, it just really makes sense where you take these bowl games and who says you got to get rid of them necessarily? We can take them and make each one of them into a playoff game of sorts. And you say, well, that's too many games. Well, every other level of college football does it, except for the highest level. High school does it. All these other, levels do it. But why does, Division I, FBS, why can they not figure it out? Mike Leach, went through that whole spiel as well. So, if you're concerned about the sponsors, keep all the bowl games, keep all that, but just make them into playoff games, and we can adjust the numbers. Maybe we cut, a couple here and there, but by and large, you can still keep them. Who says we have to get rid of all this stuff? But since they are playoff games and since they count, that's incentive. It's not necessary, it's not like you're saying, okay, we're going to pay you to play. Not like we're forcing people to be paid in order to be in a bowl game, but they want to because the game means something. It's a national title is on the line. And then I think you eliminate a lot of these boring bowls where you have everyone sitting out, and we prevent a lot of these blowouts as well because people aren't sitting out. And maybe one team has a lot of players sitting out and one team doesn't, like Georgia and Florida State this year. So I don't know. That's just my take. I don't know. What do y'all think? Do you think that that would be feasible?
I think it's a great idea. Let me ask you this question, Wes. What's the most successful postseason format of any of the sports? Which one gets the people most excited?
Jesse
March
said it.
Madness.
Yeah.
You've got 64 teams. Now, granted, it is a lot less work logistically to move 64 teams in basketball than it is 64 football teams. That's just the nature of the beast. But you don't have to do 64 teams. You could do 16. You could do 20. You could do 32. I mean, you can make it work. I mean, here in Georgia, our playoffs, we've got 5 different divisions, and each of those divisions in the playoffs have 32 teams in it. Yep. It's not hard to figure out. Just make it work.
I think their issue, the only issue I can see with that, like, yes, because March Madness is awesome. The games are a little bit quicker, so it's easy to watch so many in a day.
Yeah.
But I think if I'm doing the math and the math is mathing, the guys that win are going to have to play more football games.
Yeah.
That puts them at even higher risk for injury. And I think that's going to be their pushback. They don't want to play in a bowl game. And I know if it counts for a national championship, they're more likely to play. But they're getting put at more and more risk. We have to start the season. Well, I guess we could start at the same time, but they're going to have less time between games, maybe. I think the physical risk is what would stop that from happening, because I don't think the players would go for it. And I know they're not unionized like they are in the NFL, but we're really close.
But they play 16, 17, 18 games in the NFL. What's the difference?
They do. And that's a fair point. I think it's probably for those that maybe are not going to the NFL. Like, I'm not going to the NFL. I know, yes, I won a national title, but do I want to break my femur on the way to it so that I'm not able to go into my banking job later? Like, I don't know.
If that's the big concern for that particular format, though, then you just reduce the amount of regular season games. You get one non-conference game, or get rid of the non-conference games altogether, because you're going to be playing a non-conference opponent at the end of the season. Just go play conference games. You get one tune-up game against an FCS school, pick your poison, and then play 8 games. I mean, we only played we only played like 10 games a season back in the day.
Yeah.
So go back to that. You don't have to play 13 games in a regular season if that's the concern.
And you don't even have to play the penalizing championship games.
Yeah, well, those need to go away anyway, because they serve no purpose at this point. Because yes, you won the regular season, you won the SEC championship, yada yada, but the ultimate goal is a national championship. And if you win the regular season record, or if you split it, it's just as good, I would say.
Well, and let's say,
or you don't have you're not in a conference, you just don't play one.
Well, then you don't get a conference championship. Notre Dame.
That's what I'm saying. It hurts some people. Not playing in it never hurts some other people.
Yeah, and we've seen that numerous times, even with teams that are in a conference where it happens. But I think even if players don't want to play, I think more will want to play, and the games will actually mean something. Because as it stands right now, they really don't. They really don't mean anything outside of the playoff games. And all you can really, all you really get out of it is a pat on the back, woohoo,
and swag.
Yeah, a pat on the back and swag. And woohoo! I mean, that's great and everything. You can say you won the the Meineke whatever bowl, but yeah, I mean, I think it would incentivize a lot of people. We would see better games, and yeah, I don't know. All right, well, let's go ahead and get to an item of listener feedback real quick. So I was talking with a loyal listener of ours, AJ Hopkins, and I talked with him a little bit about some of the things that we've already talked about here. But one thing he brought up is the fact that if you piece together the things that have been said out at Colorado, it seems that Shadir Sanders played a significant amount of time this season with a fractured back. Now, they were kind of coy about it, and Dion was kind of coy about it, and Shadir missed the final game of the season because of it. But what AJ wanted us to discuss is the fact that, and because we've talked a lot about safety on the show this year, so he wanted us to kind of mention that here, because if Deion Sanders doesn't seem to mind letting his own son play with a fractured back, do you think the families of recruits might be a little concerned about letting their kid play for Coach Prime? I mean,
I think they need to be concerned letting him play for Coach Prime anyway, just given the way that all these stories that have come out of Colorado since the hype train kind of slowed down a little bit after about week 4 have just been not good.
right.
That's a pretty rough look. Again, I'm sure that his kid has a decision to make on that, and I'm sure that he probably wanted to play even with the risk of injuring himself even further. I mean, this it's not a 13-year-old kid they're trotting out there. I mean, it's a grown man, so I mean, I'm sure he had some agency in this decision. But yeah, that it's not a good look. It's not a good look. A lot of bad looks out of Colorado as of late.
Jesse?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I go back to, things that I've said last season about Brian Kelly making or letting Jaden Daniels play with a hurt ankle. And at the end of the day, the adults make the decision on who takes that field. I don't care what player wants to play, how bad they want to play. The adults make that decision. And, I'm not a medical person. I don't know all of the situation surrounding this, but it's different to play for your parent. But also, if you're a parent and their coach, I don't care how bad you want to win. These are kids. They're playing and they're going to try to impress you, and they're going to work their asses off, and they're going to try really hard to get out there because they really want to win. And you have to be the rational one. And so that's not a good look. If I'm a parent, that's a concern for me, because I'm putting the life of my child in the hands of a coach in a sport that is very dangerous. Regardless of what position you play, it's very dangerous. So many things can go wrong. And when you're at 100% capacity and health, if you're willing to sacrifice your child, I'm not going to see what you want to do with my child. Absolutely not. Winning at the end of the day is not more important than that. To me, to anyone, it shouldn't be. And that's an issue for me, is if you're going to put the game above the health of someone, especially your own child, that's not a great look. You are the adult. You have to be the one to make the decision, and you have to be the voice of reason. And also, in this situation, you have to be a parent.
Right. And that's what I was thinking, is like, that would be really difficult for me, knowing that my kid has that going on, to put them back out there in a situation. Obviously, this is a major contact sport. Any kind of fracture of the back that could be made worse, man, it would be really tough for me to say, yep, go back out there.
Back injuries are horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are really bad.
They don't heal well.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah. So, there's Deanna said a few things this year that I agree with, and that I've thought, oh, okay, well, that's kind of interesting, kind of cool that he said that. But I think there's been a lot of other things that have come out and that he said this year. I think it's kind of apparent that, Prime cares about Prime, and that's not a new thing. I mean, obviously he's kind of built a reputation on that over the years. So I think at the end of the day, he's kind of interested in what's going to put himself in a situation for success. So,
but recruits,
dangerous.
We see it literally every season. Recruits do what recruits want to do. They don't do what their families want to do. If they did, we wouldn't see all these crazy clips of them like choosing against the team of their home state and going somewhere else, and their parents getting really upset, or they're, somebody trying to steal their hat. They
Yeah.
do what they want to do. And at the end of the day, I mean, I could be wrong. We'll see how it goes next season, but recruits know the name Deion Sanders. They know the success that he had. And if they truly want to go play with him, they don't care. They're going to go do it.
Yep. 100%. All right. Well, appreciate y'all's insight.
Wes, if I can interject, we have
Yeah.
a little bit of late breaking news. I opened Twitter real quick just to check something, and apparently LSU has lured away Missouri's defensive coordinator.
Oh,
so that's an interesting development.
Okay.
Because what was Missouri's bread and butter this season?
Their defense.
Defense definitely helped them.
Yeah, so that's an interesting
defense and Cody Schrader.
That's an interesting get for old Brian Kelly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, all right. I'm interested to see how their defense evolves. Okay, well let's go ahead and talk about the only game of the season remaining.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
By the way, can we take a second and talk about how it's already January? Wasn't it just August like 2 weeks ago? Like the season just rolled right by. Like it was so fast.
The whole year. It just seems like 2023 just started and we're like, wait, is that right? 24?
24.
Yeah. So number 2 Washington 14-0 versus number 1 Michigan 14-0 in the CFP National Championship presented by AT&T. Monday, January the 8th at 7:30. Although I don't think that's kickoff. Then we say they'll actually kick off at like 8 or something like that.
TV coverage starts at 7:30. It'll be a midnight game over.
Gotta drag it on as much as possible. So, Matt, what is your prediction for the national championship game?
It all comes down to who's going to play a little bit better defense, and I think that Michigan has the better defense here. I'm going to have to go with Michigan. I don't have anything good to say about Khaki Pants at all, especially with him looking like Judge Doom over there. But I just think they got the edge here. So I'm going to say Michigan wins this game 38-28. And for the tiebreaker, Wes, I'm going to say that Penix only gets about 210 yards passing. That Michigan defense is stout.
Okay. Yeah, no, I could see that happening. Yeah, to your point, or what we were watching in the other CFP game this past weekend or this past round, Washington's offense looked really good, obviously, and it was against Texas, whose defense isn't terrible, but Michigan's is better, I think. The main reason Michigan had success against Bama, as we mentioned, is because they controlled that line of scrimmage and dictated a lot of that game. I think Michigan's probably going to push around Washington's D-line as well, as we saw. And I just think that they kind of used that to sort of wear down Washington, slowly take control of this game. I've got Michigan on maybe a late touchdown, 31-27. And I'm going to go with Penix has 390 yards passing. I think he's going to still get a lot of yards through the air, but Michigan's able to get it done. Jesse?
I don't necessarily believe that this is going to happen. It's probably not, based on the performance that we saw from Michigan this past weekend, and just knowing that with all this adversity, they're going to find a way. And Penix is going to have to be quick off the snap to make sure that those rushers aren't going to close in on him, because they got all over Jalen Milroe. However, because I'm manifesting, I'm picking Washington. Go Huskies, 31-30.
All right.
Just to be contrarian.
Yeah, exactly. You never know. I mean, I think one thing that Penix has going for him is he is a little bit better passer, obviously, and then he can move in the pocket too and run when he needs to. So it is going to be a tall order for Michigan's defense. It's going to be an exciting game, I think. I wish there was an SEC team there, but it is going to be exciting. Yeah. So anyway, all right. Well, thanks everyone for listening to this episode. If you would like to contact us, please email us at pigskinsandpageantry@gmail.com. We are at Pigskins and Pageantry on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. We are at PPSEC Podcast on X. And don't forget, we're available for download on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneIn Radio, and most podcasting apps for iPhone, Android, and other operating systems. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and review. We'd love 5 stars. We've seen a lot of growth on YouTube and TikTok. It's been a lot of fun just seeing you guys' opinions and interacting there as well. So until next time, this is Wes, and a public service announcement that until the game is over on Monday, Georgia is still the national championship team. They're still national champions. Just want to throw that out.
With the worst T-shirt design ever.
It is terrible. What was the title of last year's episode? That's ugly, but I'm probably going to buy it. So,
yeah.
This is Wes. Go Dogs.
Roll, Huskies, roll. Roll Tide.
I didn't like that. That was a little weird. It made me feel kind of awkward. Listen, it's basketball and baseball season now, so go Vols. Thanks for joining us, guys.